Hi everyone, this video is about cold process soap making without the use of a stick blender. These are items that can be probably found already around your home, so you can make cold process soap without spending a whole lot of extra money, especially when you're first starting out and that's just not in your budget, but you just want to get some soap made. You've already watched hours of YouTube and you just want to try it out. So that's what this is for. So disclaimer, this is not meant as an in-depth tutorial. This is not an all-encompassing soap making guide. You need to know about lye safety before you try any type of soap making from scratch. So this is not going to cover any of those things. This will just show how I made my soap without the use of a stick blender. So I'm going to show you what all the equipment that you will need for tonight. Aside from your oils, this is the only equipment that you will need. Okay, so again, lye safety, you need to have gloves and some type of face mask. Mine has gotten lots of use. Something to stir with. I have a plastic spoon. I also have stainless steel whisks around here, but again, I've been making soap for a while. So if you don't have a whisk, no problem. Plastic, heat safe plastic, or stainless steel or silicone. That's the only things you need to use. No aluminum, no copper. They have violent reactions with the lye. The only electric equipment I will be using, or electronic equipment I'll be using, is a battery operated digital scale, because it is crucial to have accurate weights and measurements when you're dealing with lye, caustic sodas. So the other things is just a mixing container for this particular recipe, and the recipe will be in the description box. For this recipe, it makes 24 ounces or 1.5 pounds of cold processed soap. So you'll need a container, a mixing container that is more than 24 ounces so your soap batter doesn't waste everywhere. This is a 4.5 cup container. Don't know if you can see that. Okay, so that's a 4.5 cup mixing container. And then this is what is going to be used to agitate and mix our soap batter. This is a leak-proof with a lid container, and it's not 24 ounces, so I'm going to have to split the batch in a couple of parts to mix it. But this is what's going to agitate the soap batter to get us to trace, to make sure that the soap won't separate once we get it in our mold. So what I'm using for a mold is stuff that I found around my house. So I had these little containers that I got from the Dollar Tree, and it was 3 of them in a package for $1. And so one I'm using as my soap mold. You can use almost anything for a soap mold. Again, no aluminum. It needs to be stainless steel, heat safe plastic. So if you can't see that, but it has microwave safe, and if that would focus, that'd be great. It has microwave safe icons on the bottom, so you can see that. And then there we go. So heat safe plastic, silicone, or stainless steel for dealing with lye, but you definitely want to have it lined for your soap mold. So I'm using regular cling wrap, food cling wrap, plastic wrap. You can also use a plastic grocery bag. You just want to make sure that the ink is on the opposite side away from your soap batter, because the ink will transfer. And these two I'm using to weigh out my lye and my distilled water. And so again, especially when you're making your lye solution, you definitely want to make sure you have heat safe plastic if you're using plastic at all. So I'm going to go ahead and get my oils and my lye solution prepped and ready, and then I'll bring you back and show you how to get the soap done. And it really doesn't take very long with the recipe that I formulated for this tutorial. So I'll bring you back once I'm ready. Alright, so my lye solution has already been pre-mixed. You want to mix it until it's clear, and you want to let that sit and cool for a while you weigh out your oils. So I'm going to weigh out my oils while the lye solution is still cooling, and then we'll come right back. And we're back. So my lye water has cooled down a little bit, not a lot. It's still pretty warm, but that's okay because as you can see, I did not pre-melt my oils. I am using what's called the heat transfer method. It's an option. You can research it for yourself. Again, this is not an all-encompassing tutorial. This is just a method that I've used and experimented around with for the sake of helping someone else learn how to make soap without a whole bunch of extra equipment. So I'm not pre-melting my oils. I did stir them to get the big clumps out, and that will help the oils to further melt once I add the still pretty hot lye solution. So I didn't mention before, if you want to add fragrance, you can. This is a little 1/2 ounce bottle that I bought as a sample from my local supplier. If you want to add fragrance for this particular recipe, you'll only need a 1/2 ounce of fragrance because there's only 1 ounce of oils in the total recipe. So that's entirely up to you. This batch I probably will scent, so we'll see. But when you are ready, then you get your spoon or whisk and you pour the lye solution slowly into the oils. Some people pour down the back of the spoon or spatula or whatever. It doesn't make that big of a difference to me for my personal use soaps. So once that's completely in, then you just want to stir. And you have to forgive me, I'm not left-handed, so I'm trying to do this so you all can see what's going on. So you're just going to stir, and there's the heat from the lye will slowly melt the oils in the container. And that's why it's good to break up those big chunks in the beginning. And I probably should have broken them up just a little bit more because I see some pretty big chunks of coconut oil still left in there. But I'm sure you can see that the color is changing. And I don't want to waste it. It looks like I'm wasting it. But the color is changing a little bit. And that's because there's already a chemical reaction happening between the lye solution and the oils in the container. So I'm going to try to break these up a little bit more, and I'll be right back once it's emulsified. Alright, I stirred for an additional 3 minutes to get it to this stage where it is just emulsified, and all that means is just that the oil and the lye solution are not separating. So since that's done, I've decided to go ahead and fragrance it. I'm going to empty this whole bottle. Remember, this was a 1/2 ounce of fragrance oil, and that is entirely up to you if you want to use essential oils, fragrance oils. You do not have to use the recommended 1/2 ounce per pound of oils in the recipe. If you don't like highly scented soaps or fragrance soaps, or if you have sensitivities to fragrance, you can leave it out, or you can use a very minimal amount just to barely scent the soap. So again, this is already emulsified, and so to simulate the action of what the stick blender would do, now we're going to pour off roughly half of the soap batter into this container. Again, this needs to be a leak-proof container, and I think I'm wasting some. So that's about half, maybe a little more. We're going to clean that up. Don't want raw soap batter everywhere. So once it's in that container, you're just going to put the lid on your leak-proof container. Make sure that it is completely secure and won't leak. You don't want raw soap batter on this next step. And also, just a note, again, this is not a instructional whatever for Lye Safety, but you do want to make sure that you're soaping in an area where you don't have pets, you don't have small children who are nearby where you have lye dishes and raw soap batter and things. You don't want them to get into that. So all you're going to do is just shake, and this agitation helps to create heat within the batter. Create heat within the soap batter, and that will help get it to trace. So I'm going to shake. The last time I did this experiment, it only took me about 2.5 to 3 minutes with this particular recipe to get to trace. So I'll bring you back once we are there. All right, we're back. So after about 2.5 minutes, there's a visible difference between the first half of the soap batter that has not been agitated and this half. So I don't know if you can see, but it's a runny pudding consistency, I guess, if you will. And we have achieved a very, very light trace. So that means that this is ready to go in the mold. So I'm going to get this in the mold and shake the second half. Now, if you have a bigger container, you don't have to do it in 2 parts. But this was the largest container that I had on hand for this tutorial. So I'll be back again. And we're back again. So as you can see, we've achieved a runny pudding consistency again. We have achieved trace, a light trace again. So this is ready to be poured in the mold as well. And through the magic of TV, like they say on the cooking shows, you just pour that in your mold, and you can tap your mold down if you want to have it a little bit more level, so you don't, and it also releases air bubbles. But again, if you're using this for personal use, I don't think you're going to care about air bubbles in your soap. You just want to make soap, right? So that's done. You just leave that undisturbed where it won't be touched for at least 24 hours. And then once the 24-hour period is up, you will remove it from the mold, remove the plastic from the back of the loaf, and then cut it into slices. So this is the loaf minus a couple of chunks that I did before recording this. This was my test to make sure that it would work the way I wanted it to. So you cut it into slices. I got actually 6 slices out of this 24-ounce batch of soap. So that's about 4 ounces per bar. And has a pretty good lather. This was made a few days ago. It's already pretty hard. It's just a little bit spongy in here. And if you notice this white part, it did a partial gel, so the inside of the soap is not as opaque and white as this part, but that is purely cosmetic. Still good soap, not lye heavy. It's already been pH tested. So that's your soap. Let it sit for 24 hours. Remove it from the mold, remove the plastic, cut it, sit it somewhere, preferably on where air can circulate above and below the bars, and let it cure for 4 to 6 weeks. But you can use it within a few days. If you have sensitive skin, I would recommend that you wait at least a couple of weeks. But if you use it before the 6-week period, curing time, it just will dissolve a lot faster in the shower, and you won't get as much use out of your homemade soap as you would if you allowed it to cure the full time. So that's the end of this tutorial. And again, this is a recipe. Well, actually, it's 2 recipes I made out, but I only did the first one for this video. So I will link this video in the description, and I welcome questions, and have a great night.